What's up, all you hell spawners out there? Troy to the max extreme here.
And Ghost Hunter Dave.
And together,
anything for Wanda!
we are bound in chains as IMPERIUS REX. So Spawn hit its monumental 300th issue recently.
Wouldn't you know? Right there. First or second independent comic to ever hit this milestone.
The second. With 301, it'll be the longest running independent comic ever in perpetuity until it gets beaten by something else.
Yes. That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, it quite is.
For old Todd.
And I tried to look that up to see if that was real, because I figured like there was some sort of like...
Is this real?
Like manga that has been doing it longer, and apparently not. I couldn't find anything that was carried on by the same creator throughout its entire run.
Did you check all of the internet?
I didn't go to the dark web.
Alright, well that's where it would be.
Of course it would be.
So what was 300?
What Cerebus.
Cerebus.
Yes.
Is that done?
Yeah,
Did
that's...
it end with 300?
I'm pretty sure it has.
Okay. Dave Sims probably kicking up his feet, resting on his laurels.
That's
like,
right.
yeah, I'm good. No one's gonna beat me.
Fucking did it.
And then old Todd coming up behind him with a baseball bat.
Threw his Mark McGuire balls right at his fucking head.
So, yes. So next month, he'll have topped it.
Yep.
Right now, he's tied.
Yep.
Still quite an achievement.
Quite.
Good for him.
300 issues is a lot of issues.
Especially the fact that he has pretty much, for better or for worse, written this thing for almost the entirety.
Yeah.
And did, you know, enough art duties early on to make Spawn what it is today.
Yeah. If he didn't have his fingers into the writing duties, he handed them off to another, like, superstar artist, and then took over, like, the art duties in the book or whatever. But throughout 300, he's been a part of it through the whole run.
Yeah. Kind of how Mignola, you know, manages Hellboy. He doesn't write everything, but he kind of handpicked his successors or his proteges that he's got there. Yeah, I feel like Spawn and Hellboy, outside of the nature of hell and the demonic stuff, are very similar, but two very different approaches to creator-owned characters.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like later on in Spawn's history, maybe approaching this 300, that he kind of wants it to be Hellboy-esque.
Yeah.
Where they're like these kind of one-and-done stories, and he's like this more figure that's there, even though Hellboy may be like more proactive in the story, and then Spawn takes like a second, like a back seat.
I think every character is more proactive than Spawn is through his entirety. So Spawn's main thing to do outside of Wanda is to just find a real comfy corpse chair and just have himself a good sit in that alley. So how do we want to approach this? I mean, we could talk at length on Spawn. Do we want to go from the beginning and hit 300? Do we want to go from 300 and backtrack? How do we want to tackle the movies and the toy end of this?
Oh my God.
How much time you got?
How much time indeed? I have at least an hour.
Alright, well, that's about how much time I've got on these cards, so let's see it through.
Why don't we just kind of start where it began, with the comic?
The Spawn phenomenon of 92?
91 or 92, yeah.
Yeah, so Todd and some cohorts left Marvel Comics because they wanted to make a name for themselves. They felt that Marvel was holding back, and they were just kind of being used as like workhorses.
Yes.
And they could outsell anything based on their artistic
by their
talent.
own celebrity that they've already accumulated for themselves.
Yeah. There's a great documentary about this called The Image Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can look up stuff about the Image comic boom anywhere, and it's quite a thing.
It's very interesting.
Yes. But for better or for worse, we got Spawn and then a couple other forgettable characters that were also published at that time. But Spawn seems to be the one that's held on. Yeah. And Savage Dragon. Yep. Somehow. That's almost more impressive, because that is all Eric Larson still.
All Eric Larson, yeah.
That'll be a whole nother show.
Someday.
Yeah. If any of us ever read Savage Dragon.
Spawn was like Image's mascot, I would say, for lack of better terms. And took the world by storm, selling 1.7 million copies or whatever making him almost an overnight millionaire.
Yeah.
Even if they got $1 a book, because they're getting 100% of the proceeds back. It's kind of hinted at in a Fat Man on Batman episode when Jim Lee made Wildcats.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he got like $1 million overnight.
That is insane.
And so did almost every single Image creator from there on out.
Rob Liefeld, set for life.
Yes. If they would have invested that money, put it in the bank, they could just live off the interest forever. I was going to say,
the fact that any of them still have to work is astonishing.
But Spawn came out fairly regularly. I would say more regularly than the rest of the books. Mm-hmm. Maybe skipping a month or two here or there.
Yeah.
Because by that time, McFarlane wanted to kind of get his hands into other things too, like make his McFarlane toy line.
Yep.
Which is very influential on the books, I would say.
Yeah.
He wanted to like invest in other things, such as like baseball memorabilia, like the McGuire balls, which then went defunct after they found out he was juicing, so they were like worth nothing after that.
Oh,
so it's
with the devil.
Malbosia, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then that's not even counting like other media that Spawn seeped into.
Yeah.
Which I do want to talk about, but let's stay on the comic for a bit here.
Yeah.
So I would say out of everything published around that time, Spawn is probably the only one that holds up somewhat today.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I grew up with Spawn.
Uh-huh.
I would say it was a big part of getting me into comics in probably like middle school years maybe. And that was 100% because of the movie.
Yes.
Which it's unfortunate, but I saw the movie as a kid and loved it. I even had a Spawn birthday cake.
Oh my God. Jealous.
Yeah. So based on how much I enjoyed the movie, I went back and picked up the comics and then just like sat in my bed and looked over them over and over.
Yeah.
Like the first 20 so issues, I knew front and back.
So I also got into Spawn because of the movie. Mm-hmm. I never even read a Spawn comic up until that point, but I knew who Spawn was. So like Spawn phenomena was like a real thing. Like I never read a comic, but I knew who he was. And so I also really liked the movie for whatever reason, and probably because the clown in it by John Leguizamo was the perfect casting for that son of a bitch.
It was. And Martin Sheen as Jason Wynn is just spot on.
Right on. Even to the point where last night we were just sending clown video clips to each other.
Oh my God.
In prep for the episode,
right.
Mind you.
It's funny, I've been wanting to we've been planning on doing a Spawn episode, so I was like, I kind of want to watch the movie again. Like maybe I'll talk my kids into watching it with me so I have an excuse. And I was like, I'll show them the trailer, see if it piques their interest. I put it on. They lost interest after about 30 seconds, and after that trailer ended, I was like, no, I'm good. I don't see how that would help anything.
No. But then, needless to say, I've started Spawn to read it probably 2-3 times and lose interest fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Up until it doesn't do anything until then.
Yeah, we just both listened to Comic Pops talk on this, and one of them just nailed it when they said that the comic is very much an introduction to the toy line. Yeah. Which makes Spawn, like, at that time, the modern Masters of the Universe. Yes. Because it only existed to sell toys. Yes. And that is very much it. Like, very every couple issues, he would just meet another, like, very 90s looking villain with a very 90s villain name. They would fight for a bit, and then they'd move on to the next one, and then there would be a toy of that guy in the next Spawn line. But it all worked. Like, everyone bought into it.
Oh, for sure.
Nobody, like, really paid attention to the fact that the comics were just meandering and nothing was getting accomplished in them. Right. Like, the first 70 issues, not a whole lot happens. Right. It's just Spawn sulking about Wanda, kind of wanting to get at Jason Wynn for revenge. And then I kind of dropped off around issue 100. Like, I came back in as it was nearing up to that, and then I lost interest again after. Yeah. But I have no idea where it goes from there. And I've had boring days at work where I'm gonna wiki Spawn and
I've done the exact same thing, yeah.
And after 4 paragraphs of names and words I can't even comprehend, I'm just like, all right, I'm not on board because I can't even read a summary of what this is about.
Right. But then you read it, and, like, it looks like a lot happens in this wiki. But then you read it, and, like, when does this happen? When is all of this taking
Probably
place?
like in a series recap.
I've read another 100 issues, and I never got this one paragraph out of it.
Yeah. It never felt like it had any clear direction.
Right.
Or if it did, it never felt like that was driving the book anywhere.
Right.
This is, and we've said this before, this is a comic that I feel like the premise is great.
I love the premise.
You can, like, pitch that, but it never, like, does enough with it. If you were to reboot Spawn, having 300 issues of continuity that you could pick from and tighten up and make into a cohesive story,
yeah,
I think it could be amazing.
Yeah.
If they, like, did an ultimate revamp of Spawn, that would be great.
Right.
You know? Avoiding all these legal fiascos that Todd trips into, and making sure, like, characters have a purpose, and like, if I'm not going to use this villain ever again, maybe kill him off. Don't just, like, never mention him again. For instance, Chapel, the man that kills L. Simmons and essentially creates Spawn. He is confronted in issue 13, and then he never appears in the book again. Spawn, like, roughs him up and brands the skull face, the skull makeup that Chapel wears to his face.
Right.
And then he's never seen in the book again.
Was that because that was a legal fiasco with Liefeld, though?
I think it became one, but because Chapel was a Rob Liefeld character.
Right.
And then later in Youngblood, like a couple issues after that occurred in Spawn, Chapel kills himself because he wants to, like, get Spawn powers, as he would. And, like, he's turned into a weird hell demon called Lord Chapel. And then he separates, and then in some weird spin-off, he teams up with Spawn. But I don't know where it goes from there. Like, Chapel just faded out into obscurity. But you would think a driving character in the Spawn comic never appears in Spawn again. So much so that way down the line, they, like, retcon him and make it Jessica Priest as the person responsible for killing Al Simmons.
Right.
And that's just kind of because I think they folded the movie in on it.
Oh, sure.
Where they have her be the killer in the movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in the animated series, it's Chapel, which came out at the same time as the movie. So it's like, what is going on here? I just don't understand that. I always liked that character, and it's totally a 90s comic trope. I like it because he looks cool. He's a cool-looking character.
Yes, he is.
He's this militant black badass with skull face paint.
Right.
And he's a cool looking dude.
Yes.
But he doesn't ever do anything.
And being with that, with all those different continuities out at the same time, you got the movie here, you got the comic here, you got the animated series here, you have people's, like, own headcanon of what's going on. Like,
my headcanon of Spawn makes more sense than any of those.
I think most do.
Yes.
But then and what makes it really confusing is that it also, in, I guess, the source material, the book, it'll also go back and retcon stuff to be one of the other, and then you're like, what's real? I can't make any heads or tails of this. I have no idea.
And that's not anything new for, like, big two publishers, but something that's creative owned, and the only person that is contributing to this is Todd. It's like, what are you doing, Todd? Get your story straight. You're just picking and choosing what you want to have in continuity at this point.
There are people that take this very seriously, Todd.
I know.
Me, not so much. No. But I like a little bit of it, you know?
Exactly. I know, that's where I'm thinking as I'm reading into this, as I'm rereading this, I'm kind of at this thought process of, like, but for what? What am I going to get out of this other than just confused and irritated as it goes on? But it's not bad as I'm going back and revisiting these. It's very much a product of the times, and you have to just appreciate it for what it was in the 90s when it was the coolest thing in the world.
Right.
And you read it today and you're like, oh yeah, that didn't age well. But you can see where they were coming from.
Right. It was good enough for, like, the short amount of time he was the hottest shit ever. He got a comic, animated series, toy, and a movie deal in, like, a 5-year span of his creation.
Yeah. Plus video games, board games, anything like that.
Yeah.
Hats.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of Spawn hats.
Yeah.
So writing aside, which leaves a little to be desired, because none of these guys were writers, but it's much wordier than you would expect from someone whose only purpose was to make badass art.
Right.
Like, there are some of these newscaster pages.
Oh my god,
you're just
kill
like,
me.
why are you even spending the time on this? Outside of Todd not being, like, he's not a writer by trade, he's an artist. Or a storyteller, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do really appreciate that in the early Spawn issues, he just hired on all these notable writers.
Right.
And in the first 20 issues, he has Alan Moore do a guest spot, Dave Sims do one, Frank Miller, Neil Gaiman, and Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
All contributed to probably like 8 or 9 issues of Spawn's first 20 issues.
Almost half of the first 2 years of it.
And I remember as a kid going through those issues, which were way more like one-off standalones, as not being my favorite ones because it wasn't enough of like the Spawn mythology. But rereading them now, they are obviously the best ones of that collection. The Alan Moore, Billy Kincaid, as he's doing like the Dante's Inferno through Hell, is fantastic.
Yep, that one's good.
Neil Gaiman's Angela and Medieval Spawn mythology was really cool.
Yep.
Grant Morrison does a really good Grant Morrison-y Heaven Hell story where he introduces the Redeemer or the anti-Spawn in that one. And Frank Miller does his usual Frank Miller gangs and alleys shooting each other.
Yeah.
And then Dave Sims does this really weird dream-like story, which is kind of talking about how the big 2 publishers were using creators as like slaves, and they do a social commentary on that, which was never collected in any of the trade paperbacks up until just recently with this hardcover.
Hardcovers?
In the soft cover, it's not in there. It's so weird. I think that is like the only thing it's collected in.
Okay. Wow.
It was interesting that Todd was at a point where he was just establishing this character, but then he brings in all these talented people,
and
they're like,
has the clout.
You do it. You establish the character. It's like there's a lot of things that are very pivotal to Spawn's background that were just like made up on a whim by Alan Moore or Grant Morrison or something.
Or Neil Gaiman, where he gets him in hot legal trouble later down the line.
For multiple reasons.
That whole Angela thing is very interesting to find the legal battles and what. Now living at Marvel and then now as an Asgardian.
Yes. But a very key player in early Spawn.
Yeah.
And even like helped him kill Malbolgia. Spoilers in issue 100. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And she dies in it. So I don't know if she's like reborn in the Marvel universe or how they explain that. There's no way of knowing. That Wikipedia is impenetrable. So 1 through 20. That brings us to 300. I'm going to keep reading it. I know you're not, but I'm intrigued. I have 10 hardcovers, so I want to at least get through those.
I'll probably read 301 because there's a story at the end of this that goes nowhere.
Right.
Probably only to be finished in 301, I would hope, anyway.
Or in a recap later on in like 359. But, Spawn 300.
Yeah, so the road to 300 started at 296, or it kind of gives you like a 2-issue recap.
Of everything.
Of everything. And when you can fit 300 almost issues into 2 issues, what are you trying to do here?
You realize not a whole lot has happened in this book.
But then you hear stuff that happened around like issue 100, and I'm like, that seems like a pretty big thing. They don't even, I don't think, touch on it in the recap issues.
And then later on, I don't even remember where this fit in the timeline, but Spawn kills himself.
Yeah.
And the power goes to the white guy that Spawn turned into in like the early issues.
Right.
But he's a separate person.
Yeah.
And he has the suit for like 12 issues, and then Hal Simmons comes back.
Yeah.
I have no idea how that plays out. I'm very curious to get to it, but I don't feel like when I finish it, I don't think I'm going to know anything more about it than I do right now.
I'm pretty sure that happens fairly late on, maybe around issue 200 or something like that, because I remember it happening.
It's called like Endgame or something?
I don't know. I don't know, Dave. But I remember it being newsworthy. Oh, Spawn's gonna it's a creator-owned comic, and the Al Simmons is gonna die, the mantle's gonna go to somebody else. I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Only to revert back to Al Simmons later
Very
because...
quickly.
he retained a piece of his costume or whatever and it'll be a Spawn. I don't know.
Yeah, and I only bring that up because that character makes another appearance in this.
Yes.
But then there's all these other weird things where Spawn, like, controls zombie versions of some of his previously killed foes.
Yeah.
Like Cygor, Overkill, and the Curse.
Yeah, and, like, what was the chick? The Freak or something like that?
Yeah, the Freak. Who I always thought was a boy. I don't know. Maybe there's two. Yeah, that's him there.
Okay.
That's a man.
Okay.
Yeah, he has certain rogues that have stood the test of time. Redeemer has wings now and looks pretty cool. It's not Jason Wynn, who it was originally, for some reason. I always liked the design of the Curse. I'm amazed that he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to approach this? So it's split into several segments.
Yeah.
The first one is really like the story, the length of a normal comic, and then there's kind of like backup material, I would say.
But I feel like from 298, 299, it's like revving up to like a continuous story to 300. But I felt like this was kind of told like maybe out of order, it felt like. Because he's going and fighting Redeemer at the end of 299.
Yeah.
And then in this, it jumps to something else. Fights Redeemer somewhere in the middle. Well, fights.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to some other stories. But it kind of takes the piss out of, like, leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it tells something completely different. I'm like, well, where does this fit in?
Yeah.
When does this happen?
And then the fight that had been ramping up to is just them talking in the dark. Penned by Scott Snyder, so you know you're getting your money's worth on word per page.
I never even noticed a difference, really.
Yeah.
But all the artists that came into this was really good, and McFarlane actually back on pencils, like, looks like he never missed a step.
Oh, I know. And he does that one. He does the Redeemer and Spawn fight, and it's great. Like, I think some of those pages are amazing looking. Jason Sean Alexander does a pretty big segment in here, and he's kind of the current Spawn artist at the time. I don't know if he's sticking on after this, but we talked about how much we liked him on Abe and Hellboy.
Yeah.
But he seems like a really good fit for Spawn.
For sure. And
then a very weird, out of place J. Scott Campbell.
Yes.
With Jessica Priest.
Yes.
For some reason is, I guess, kind of a key player at this point. Her, like, contact, Nyx, who has been... She's been in the continuity somehow. Somewhere in there. She dies. We get another, like, full-page, 2-page splash. And then she becomes She-Spawn. With the most 90s-looking get-up I've ever seen.
I actually laughed out loud when I saw She-Spawn. I'm like, awesome.
Why?
Like, it's just stupid enough where I'm like, I'm on board.
Yeah. A leather jacket, chains, skulls, a motorcycle, and a giant gun that looks like it's made of, like, 5 guns.
It looks like she's a Spawn Ghost Rider mash 'em up
action figure.
I like that she's got a big, huge plume of red hair instead of, like, a big red cape. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Even though she doesn't have long hair normally as a character. Yeah. So weird that they had J. Scott Campbell jump on for that.
I know. I don't know if he was ever, like, a series regular or anything.
No,
maybe
I don't think he was.
McFarlane a favor.
I have no idea. I don't know what he did outside of, like, Danger Girl.
I have no idea.
But I would say the main Spawn storyline on this, written by Todd and illustrated by Greg Capullo, is Spawn showing down once more with Clown, even though I swear he just killed him right before that last recap. It, like, killed him for good. And then he comes across this kind of big mafioso-looking guy. They have a talk for a while, and then Spawn's like, oh, hey, you're Clown. And it is. It's like, you know, you kind of look like Clown. And he's like, yeah, you know, people tell me that. Also, I am Clown. I have my hair pinned back by a ponytail instead of out on the side.
You might not have recognized me.
Yes.
Well, is that the far right newscaster? Is that who that is?
Is it?
I don't
guess it
know.
looks
I don't know.
A bit like him.
Maybe can't remember.
Is. I thought there was some lead up where like he met. It's not in this one, right? It was in one of the other ones.
It's like in 298 or something like that.
Maybe it is that newscaster. Him?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. It kind of looks
what
like
is happening in
but
Spawn?
At the same time, it might not be. I guess we'll wait for a recap. He doesn't have the goatee. but he looks similar enough that you could just say, like, they weren't communicating on directions for the art.
When Thunderbolt Ross turned into Red Hulk, he didn't have a mustache either.
It's the only reason to make Thunderbolt Ross a Hulk. That mustache. But anyway, he transforms into a beefier Violator.
I'm glad you kept going as I blow my nose.
Yep. We don't have time. Our spawn clock is ticking. This guy turns into a big hulking Violator.
Yep.
Which looks more formidable than he ever did as a spindly thing. But I always liked that.
The pencil-thin arms, I'm like, how do you even operate?
That was always, like, in his mouth. He, like, couldn't move his arm without it, like, going up his nose and into his throat. But they beat Spawn up real good, I guess.
Yep.
And then Spawn blows himself up.
Right.
They think he's dead, and he comes out, he's Al Simmons.
Right.
And he basically mutilates his body to somehow reflect the look of Spawn on himself. Wraps himself in barbed wire, puts some sand in his eyes.
Right.
Drives some stakes through his arms.
Yeah, this, like, actually kind of made me chuckle, even though it was supposed to be, like, a hardcore moment. It's just like, he grabs his skull to make his belt.
His belt. Just
like,
shoves that skull into his guts.
Just,
you imagine taking a human skull and just like...
Like, I like the ashes for the eyes, but like, it's still weird that he has to have, like, the Malbosia symbol.
That's what I thought.
It's like, why don't I just give that up?
Yeah.
But I did like the total hardcore barbed wire, railroad ties to the arms, like that type of shit. That was kind of cool.
Love a good wrap in barbed wire.
You betcha I do.
The railroad ties might be taking it a little too far. His arm is just going to buckle if he tries to hit anyone with that. He's going to cut off all of his major arteries, everything.
But regardless to say that he's always a Spawn. Like,
always
Al
Spawn.
Simmons is just always a Spawn, regardless if they have all of his costume or not.
Suit don't make the man.
That's right.
So we're left with many questions by the end of 300.
Right.
But you know what? They hit 300, and that's what's important.
Congratulations.
Yes. Yep. What a ride it's been. So before we wrap up, we touched a little bit on the movie and how it's a massive failure, but also probably 100% responsible for putting us where we are today.
Right. I think it's almost exactly responsible for where we are today. This show specifically.
Yeah.
When we met, you peeked over my shoulder of what we were drawing in this classroom, and I was drawing Spawn because I loved him from the movie, and that's why we even started talking to each other. If not for Spawn, you would not have this show.
That's right. It's about time we address that.
So, thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd. He just keeps on giving. Keeps giving back. But outside of the Spawn movie,
right?
I would say my favorite iteration of Spawn is the HBO animated series.
Yes.
Which I recently rewatched earlier this year. And it holds up astonishingly well.
Yes.
It was made around the time of the movie. And you just wonder, like, how would you get these two completely different tellings of essentially the same story?
Yeah.
And the animated series is done, like, so well.
Right.
It's plotted out well, because they pulled a ton from the comic.
Yeah.
Like, the first 15 issues or so are almost completely represented on screen, but in a much more mature, like, well thought out process.
Paced way better.
Yeah.
I remember you let me borrow that, like, in high school, and I was like, oh, this should be what Spawn is all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's the distillation of Spawn.
Yes.
Like, just, if someone wanted to, what is Spawn? I would give them this. And say, like, this is as good as Spawn gets.
100%, yeah. Even as the series progresses, like, Todd McFarlane is at the beginning of every episode. Is like,
those are great.
Welcome in, folks.
Hey, asshole.
Hey, you over there, you want to see a Spawn picture? Here you go. Now get out of here.
Yeah.
And then here's a Spawn.
Hey, want to see something fucked up?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then you go into, like, a pretty great Spawn episode, but, like, he explains, like, later in, like, the vignettes in the beginning, he's like, I want to do him more in black and, like, have him be cast in the shadow. So, like, he kind of has an idea of what his endgame of Spawn kind of wants to be already here in, like, this HBO series.
Yep. So before we wrap up, one more box that we should check off on Todd's insane repertoire of production. the McFarlane toys.
Yes.
Which seemed to be kind of his end-all on why he did all of this.
Right.
Was to make this insane toy company.
Yeah. So his frame of mind is like, I want something as good as you can see, like, on the page, represented in real life.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to look as good in real life as it is in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, he was able to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And, like, his toy business, I think, is what's keeping him afloat completely. Like, I don't know what they
Is
even,
it anymore? Like, is it a big thing anymore?
Do they still do, like, the sports figures and stuff like that?
They do sports, they do some video games, but I don't think they don't do cool movie stuff and comic stuff like they used to.
Right.
I remember when the Tucker household first got the internet, my #1 site was Spawn.com.
Oh, really?
And they had a message board there that I was frequent on there. I was the Redeemer on that.
Oh my God.
So if anyone that watches this, this is what happened to the Redeemer. But, man, I mean, they were everything in, like, my middle school to high school years. Like, everything I was into, McFarlane had a hand in.
Yeah.
They did those amazing Movie Maniac figures, which I had, like, everything of. I bought a ton of the Spawn comic figures.
Yep.
Bought all the movie stuff. That's probably what got me into it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, every time, like, I would make a trip to, like, Toys R Us, my fixation would be on these McFarlane toys. Even if I had no idea who they were, I'm just like, these look awesome. And that, I think, sums up Todd McFarlane's career to a T.
Absolutely.
Is that this looks awesome.
Yep.
And there you have it. Like,
there's
Spawn looks awesome.
Spawn 300. Looks awesome.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
So, while the substance may not be there, it's still amazing that Spawn got to 300.
There's a spark of necroplasm there that could illuminate into a larger substance.
Right.
Under the right direction. I'm not sure if Todd is the right person to be writing it, but I feel like he could manage the right person to expand the Spawn mythos into something, like, legendary.
Yeah, so starting in 301, they say that something is going to shake up Spawn forever. Like, that's what they say on, like, every kind of, like, big seminal issue or whatever. But what if it's handing it off to a different writer?
That would be cool.
And, like, they take, like, a full-on different, not a whole different spin on him, but, like, their own kind of take on where they want to go from now. Mm-hmm. And they kind of just hand it off, like, after 50-issue runs or whatever. That would be kind of fucking sweet.
That would be cool. Like, give someone else a chance to, like, make their mark on Spawn. You know, like, kind of like Daredevil. Like, read the Bendis arc.
Right.
You know, read the Miller arc. Or
Yeah.
something like that, instead of it just all kind of being samey.
Yeah. Maybe that's weird, because, like, in Image Comics, like, Todd wouldn't necessarily own it. So, like, I don't know how that would work so much, but still, it's a cool idea.
And he's a character that has shown that you can really do whatever you want with, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and always roots back to Al Simmons' Spawn.
Yeah,
he's always going to be Spawn.
I feel like we don't cover a whole lot of ground from 1 to 300. Like, it's about where we started.
Yep.
But that leaves it open to have people come in and do whatever they want. They could do, like, Warren Ellis style one-off issues that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Or someone could just take the reins and establish this entire new mythology, which could be really cool.
Yeah. So there you have it, Spawn. Did you read everything up to 300? Let us know and how your
no one did.
mental health is.
I almost posed a question like, if anyone, because we've had people asking for us to do a Spawn episode, and I'm always afraid we're going to offend someone because we are so, like, out of touch with it.
Right.
But we're Spawn fans, and I don't want to do it a disservice.
Right.
So I was going to open it up, like, can someone just sum up what happened? So, like, we don't appear like we haven't done any homework, and you just, like, tell us, here's a couple talking points on Spawn from issues, like, 70 to 300.
Right.
I don't think this person exists.
As far as I can tell, anybody who's a huge fan read up to 100 and then kind of dropped it.
And then maybe started buying it for when McFarlane started doing those facsimile covers where he drew Spawn in, like, the Dark Knight pose or lifting the Superman car.
For sure.
Yeah.
But we would love to start a chat about Spawn in the comments down below, so if you could, please do so. But until next time, I've been Short of the Max Extreme.
And I've been Ghost Hunter Dave.
And we have been Imperius Rex. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm losing it. I got
Here, maybe you want this.
No, I don't. I don't even want to touch that one.
Oh, hey. What is it? Cat
Cats
showdown.
aborted.
All right. No room for cats in this.
No. Too much Spawn to talk about.
That's right.